Rob created the position of CEO for Gifts of Life International. And since then, he has visited 38 countries on 5 continents to build the Gifts of Life global network of 84 affiliates. During Rob's tenure with Gifts of Life International, 30 affiliates have been created, while over 35,000 children have received care. Rob focuses on strategically building bridges between Gift of Life programs, foreign governments, Rotary clubs and districts, like-minded organizations, and hospital administration in order to address the global crisis of congenital heart defects. So please join me in welcoming Rob Rahman from Gift of Life International.
Hi, everybody. Are you able to hear me?
Yes.
Great. So thank you for the invitation. I really appreciate this. And, you know, during this new era of Zoom, since March of 2020, I've probably done 250 to 300 Rotary presentations on Zoom. And so I always like to change it up a little bit, but I do begin with this. And that is, as a Rotarian, and I'm a 15-year Rotarian, twice president of my Rotary Club, the Rotary Club of Manhasset in New York. As a Rotarian, at a breakfast, lunch, as you are right now, or dinner table, or now on Zoom, we could do more for the people of this world than just about anybody who is a member of any other organization. And that is not said to put others down, but it really is said to raise us up as Rotarians. And my experiences show that there are 2 reasons for that. Number one, as a Rotarian, you join Rotary to do good and to help others and to add to your community. And therefore, Rotarians have the hearts of humanitarians. That is their goal, is to do something for humanity. And the second reason I believe we're able to do things is because of the Rotary Foundation. It is clearly one of the greatest tools in this world that can help deliver care to others that we see. And so with those 2 elements, we really do have the ability to affect change, to create hope, which is our new theme coming into the next Rotary year, to make a difference, you know, as we've had past Rotary themes. So we really can do things as Rotarians that others and other organizations perhaps don't have that opportunity. And there probably is no greater example of where that's true than what happened with Gift of Life. And I'm going to go into a little bit of the beginnings of Gift of Life, how it started, and then how it has evolved into the #1 humanitarian organization in this world that today delivers care to children with heart disease in the developing world. We are the #1 through the global network of Rotary. Gift of Life is the #1 humanitarian organization that delivers hope and help to those children. And so Gift of Life started in a Rotary Club like yours, a smaller Rotary Club in Manhasset, New York in 1975. They were meeting at a diner, Landmark Diner. Diners are pretty big on Long Island. And so they were meeting at a diner in Long Island. And a Rotarian had read an article in the Rotarian magazine about a little girl in Uganda that had been mauled by a hyena. And in the article, they talk about what happened to this girl and the issues that she was facing, and basically making Rotarians around the world aware of her needs. And so the Rotary Club of Manhasset, in wanting to help this child somehow, and I'm sure many had the same intent, wrote a letter to the Kampala Rotary Club in Uganda. Now, in those days, we didn't have Zoom, we didn't have texting, we didn't have faxes, we didn't have any way of getting in touch other than writing a letter, putting it in the mail, and sending it that way. A month later, they got a response back from Kampala. And the response was, thank you for your interest, but we got an outpouring of support for this child. A doctor from Australia had already lined it up for her to come to Melbourne, be operated on, and then start her process of healing. So, you know, she's been taken care of. And her name is Margaret Rose. And by the way, Margaret Rose just passed away 2 years ago and ended up growing up to living a full and healthy life in Australia. She became a nurse. It was a beautiful Rotary story in and of itself. But we always stayed in touch with Margaret because she really was the genesis and the beginning of Gift of Life. Because when we got that letter back, when the Rotary Club of Manhasset got that letter back in 1975, the Rotary Club of Kampala said, Margaret Rose has been helped, but we have a little girl here that has a heart issue. We can't take care of her in Uganda. Can you help her? And the Rotary Club in Manhasset had one of their club members who was just hired by St. Francis Hospital as the public relations in Roslyn, New York, very close to Manhasset. And they were looking for ways of getting attention for the program at the new heart program at St. Francis. So they said, well, let's get St. Francis to accept this child, bring the child over, help out that child. We as Rotarians can help somebody. And then in the community, we can help one of our businesses in the community. And so there began the journey of Gift of Life. Grace Agwaru, a 5-year-old little Ugandan girl, came from Kampala to New York with her dad and became the first ever Gift of Life child. And so from that day, the Rotary Club of Manhasset began to do one child a year for a couple of years. And then the district got onto it and sent some other districts around us in New Jersey got involved in it. And so in the mid-1980s, Gift of Life was in a spattering of Rotary clubs and districts in the US and starting to get out around the world. A big change for Gift of Life was in 1983 when President and Mrs. Reagan brought back 2 Korean children on Air Force One with them, 2 children that had been accepted by Gift of Life. And at the time, Gift of Life arranged through the First Lady's office to have the child brought back on Air Force One, get all of that attention. You can go on YouTube and actually Google check out the arrival of the 2 Korean children with the Reagans. It's really very cute. The president gets off the helicopter at the White House with the 2 children and walks to the podium and basically says, I can't leave my wife alone anywhere. She went out shopping and came back with 2 children to bring back for heart care in the United States. And really that got notoriety all over the world for Gift of Life through the Rotary world. We went from maybe 5 or 10 programs to 15, 20, 30, 40, and just exponentially increased because of that single event. And so through the Rotary world, Gift of Life began to grow and was helping hundreds of kids a year. What really changed our trajectory was in the late 2000s, 2008, 2009. And I started around that time. And one of the things we realized was that by having people work together and being able to coordinate effort, we would be able to increase our impact. And then also we realized it would be best to go into countries and develop care for the children within their country of birth so that they did not have to travel thousands of miles to another country, which really was not sustainable, to bring them to US-based hospitals or other hospitals in other countries we had relationships with. It was best to operate on them in their own country. So we began to do a whole strategic review, what countries can care for their own and would need just help in funding the surgeries, or what countries had the opportunity to develop a program but needed training and needed empowerment of their doctors and nurses. And so in 2009, what we did to be able to bring all of Gift of Life together and this Rotary initiative that had been out there for almost 2 decades, 3 decades now, was to be able to focus on the training and the development of sustainability. And now why that was important was that because that played into, and if any of you have done a Rotary Global Grant, the concept of developing sustainable programs is essential in writing a Rotary Global Grant. And as I mentioned before, the use of the foundation, our Rotary Foundation, became crucial to the success of Gift of Life. So what we began to do was to pick countries where we had the opportunity to develop sustainability. The first country we went to was Uganda. The first country we had a child from, Grace came from Uganda. They had already had a program, but they were not able to move that program any further because they weren't able to afford the training. They had to upgrade equipment. And so we went through a very detailed 5-year plan in Uganda to upgrade the skills of the team, to upgrade the equipment that they used, and then to be able to get the hospital and the government to back them. And so over the last 12 years, we worked with the Ugandan government, we worked with the hospital, we empowered doctors and nurses through over $2 million worth of Rotary Global Grants, where we upgraded the equipment they were using. We sent 40 training teams to Uganda over that period of time. And now that Ugandan team that in 2009 was operating on 9 children is now operating on over 150 kids on their own and treating their own children in their country of birth. Now, that is what Rotary wants to accomplish. When I first started becoming a Rotarian, and when I first became a Rotarian, and many of you may have heard this phrase, is that you can give a man a fish and he could eat for the day, or you could teach a man or a woman to fish and they could eat for a lifetime. And that's what made a difference in our approach than from other approaches, is that we really believed in the people of countries and we really believed in their ability, but they just needed the resources. So Uganda became our first success story. And then followed by that, in 2010, we took on El Salvador. El Salvador, you may have heard in the news and you may hear things about how difficult that country is, and indeed it was. I first visited there in 2009. Gang violence was fairly rampant. Their program was operating on kids, but they were not recovering the children. They would operate on 65 children through their cardiac program, and 1 out of every 4 of them would die in the ICU. So clearly there was an issue of training, and we realized we could make an impact. We could make a difference. We could create hope for those families by going in there and putting a plan together like we did in Uganda. And so we did another set of Rotary Global grants over the last decade again, over 2.5 million in Rotary designated grants that went in there, and we're able to now create a program that in 2022, they operated on 151 kids on their own with a mortality rate of less than 3%. And then on top of the open heart surgeries, they did 80 interventional cath procedures, which is not being able to open the chest, but going through the groin and correcting a child's heart ailment. So they operated on over 230 children in El Salvador on their own with a mortality rate of less than 2%. The mortality rate was brought down because of the advent of the interventional caths. So now we have empowered 2 countries, one in East Africa, Central America, to be able to care for their own. And so many of you may not know, but the #1 birth defect is a congenital heart defect. 1 out of every 100 children born in this world, whether they're born in the US or they're born in Honduras or they're born in the Philippines, has a heart defect. And half of those children will need some sort of intervention to take care of them. So that numbers wise works out to about 1.3 million kids a year are born with a congenital heart defect. 93% of those children are born in a country that can do absolutely nothing to care for them. So what does that translate into? I'm sure many of you are moms or dads, maybe some of you are grandparents. You would literally watch your child perish in front of your eyes if you lived in 93% of this world, if that kid had a heart defect. So this is a major global crisis that we're working to address. It's as bad as any crisis that's out there. It is not talked about a lot. I've been to 38 countries. Every country I meet with the Ministry of Health, not one country when we started had a plan, had any type of policy on how to deal with congenital heart defects, for children in that country. Not one. So when we go in and we do this work, this is literally life-saving work from day one. And in order to maximize our impact, we do have criteria of where we go. So before we went to Uganda, before we went to El Salvador, we applied our criteria, which is, and I alluded to it earlier, is government support. The government needs to be invested in putting money into the program. A hospital needs to be motivated and engaged in developing that program. There needs to be a team in place that we can train and empower to basically be able to take care of these children. And then ultimately, we want to have an on-the-ground NGO, most times it's a Rotary Club or a Rotary District, that will then follow up as we finish Gift of Life International's role in the development. They will continue to sustain support throughout the life of that program, because developing a pediatric cardiac program in a developing country is not easy for many reasons. And the governments will have funding, but they will never have the adequate funding to fully realize the potential of that program. And so we always look to continue the non-governmental support through Rotary or other means, corporate foundation in those countries, so they can pay for and help to support the programs. And so all of this ties into, as I began this story, Gift of Life would never be possible without the Rotary Global Network. Anytime I go to a country, it's always a Rotarian that will make the introductions to the hospital, to the government, to any of the businesses we work with. Rotary is a great door opener in most of these countries. Maybe they don't have the funding locally to do it, but they certainly have the connections and the ability to be able to start that process. And then the Rotary Foundation, and I don't know how active your club or your district is in that, But the Rotary Foundation, again, does work all over this world, not only with polio, but with literacy and with water wells, and now with the malaria outbreaks in Africa through the program of SCALE that they have. But we have accessed over $15 million in Rotary Foundation funding since 2013. Second to Polio Plus, Gift of Life programs get more money than any Rotarian-based program there is in the world. And we do that because we're able to continuously add Rotary clubs and districts. And that's why I do all of these meetings, is because when you are able to touch the heart of a Rotarian and they have the desire and the ability, they always make a difference. And my club is about the size of your club. And, you know, I never believe any meeting or any club is too small or too big to be able to help this process, because it is one of the great crises in this world today. We are able to do what we do because of this global network of like-minded organizations, Rotary clubs and districts and foundations. In the last Rotary year, 2021 into 22, we helped the most kids we've ever helped before, 4,017 children. This year, our goal is 5,000 children. Last year, we helped a child every 2 hours and 18 minutes. A child is being operated on through a Gift of Life program somewhere in the 5 continents that we're on. This year, our goal is to get down to every hour a child is helped through Gift of Life. And so I hope that gives you a sense of where we began, where we are today, why we're here, why we're at the stage that we are. I would love to open it up if you have some specific questions, anything that I touched on that you'd like to hear more about. But the fact of the matter is, what we do is possible. We do have to scale it up. We are now sustainable in Uganda, El Salvador, and Romania. Our next 2 countries we're on the verge of sustainability is going to be Bolivia and Jamaica. And so we really are very excited about that, but we know that there's so much more work out there. I'll be traveling in May to Lebanon, to Jordan, throughout the Mideast through our programs there, to Egypt, then to Bolivia, and then ultimately the Philippines and into Melbourne for the Rotary Convention. And throughout those meetings, what we really are working to do is to continue our ability to affect the lives of others, of children that today are just not getting reached. So I appreciate the opportunity to meet with you. I wish I could have been there in person, but this is, I hope, just as good. And I would love to, if you have some questions, address those if we have time. So thank you.
Thank you, Raj. I'll go ahead and give you a round of applause.
Thank you.
Do we have questions, anyone? Lynn? I have a couple. You're obviously very passionate about this.
Right.
Right. And your background is in management of large companies, and that's so my first question is, what got you so passionate?
Look, a great question. I've never been blessed to have children of my own. The man who started Gift of Life, that Rotarian who raised his hand in 1975, I became friends with him in 1987. When I worked from Senator D'Amato in New York, I moved on to working for Browning Ferris Industries, which you guys in Georgia, they were a major carting company in the United States and throughout the world. So I worked with them, and I met Robbie Dono through that relationship. And as I got to know Gift of Life and I got to know the problems out there in the world, I became more attuned to the fact that, you know, sometimes there's something bigger than yourself. And sometimes, you know, we get caught up in who we are and what we do. And why I really love the Rotary is because as I became a Rotarian in 2008, I became a little bit more aware of this world and what was going on in the world and the needs around the world. And honestly, I feel very blessed in being in a position where I can affect the lives of a child every single day that I get up. I literally have a list of countries. This morning, I was already on a full phone calls with the Philippines and with Amman, Jordan, to talk about our programs there. To have that ability to get up in the morning and affect the lives of kids all over this world is, to me, motivation enough. So my 15 years of doing this have just made my commitment stronger because, you know, I've met the moms and the dads and I've seen the joy in having a child's life saved, but I've also been there when the child did not make it. And it's probably the most devastating thing you can be part of is to watch a parent go through this emotion of the stress of worrying about them getting cared for, then coming there and caring for them, and then a child not making it through the surgery they had prayed for years that they would have the opportunity for. And so when you see that, you just rededicate yourself to making sure that a kid is going to celebrate a birthday and not parents have to go through a funeral. And it really gets down to that many times. I mean, I've been to so many funerals of our children over the 15 years, and I go there because I want to help avoid that next one. So, you know, it's become a passion of mine, even though this is my job. It doesn't even feel like a job anymore. It feels like something you just need to do. And I really feel blessed that I work with Rotarians and healthcare volunteers. We have hundreds of volunteers around the world who go on our missions and train with us. And when I watch them doing the work they do, it can't help continue to inspire. And it's, you know, it's the best thing I've ever done. You know, in my 61 years of living, I could never have imagined the feeling the way I do right now about a job. So thank you for that question.
That's incredible. So you I told you that $2,000 that we are going to be sending to you.
Great.
All part in helping with the incredible work the organization is doing. We are so grateful for what you're doing. And the hope that you're giving to these families is amazing. So we're just so happy, so thankful to be a part of that with you.
Well, let me say we appreciate that. I just want to let you know that that's going to go to a grant. I'm working to finalize, God willing, the funding this week. That will take care of the children. I think it's 72 to 79 children now in India. In India, they have great programs, but they don't reach all the kids. So the kids you're going to help fund are kids that would never, ever get operated on and never get treated. You'll get the pictures. You'll be part of all of that. And hopefully you'll be able to see the lives that you will have an impact on.
Awesome. Thank you.